Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where we go in search of wildlife photography. I appreciate you being here. If it's your first time, please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you like today's content, make sure you give it the old thumbs up. That way the YouTube algorithm will show it to more like-minded people. Well, what I want to talk about today is wildlife photography and photographers. What attributes or qualities does it take to be one here in 2024? I'm only going to give you what I think are the top three. Now, this is highly subjective. Going to be many, many more. Plenty that I'm going to leave out here. So if you would, in the comments below, let us all know what you think the top qualities or attributes it takes to be a wildlife photographer here in 2024. To me, there's nothing better than being out in nature, surrounded by wildlife and wild places, and them doing wild things. To be hidden, getting their mug shot, them not knowing I'm anywhere around, well, that's a pretty special feeling. I'm always excited on the way back to the truck to hurry and get home, plug in my SD card, and see how well my photo session went, see if I was able to do my part. Kind of gives me a little bit of a euphoria feeling, thinking what it might have been like for old Marlin Perkins while he was hosting the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdoms show. One thing I know for sure is from your very first encounter, you're going to be hooked for life. For me, probably the number one quality or attribute to be a wildlife photographer or to get into wildlife photography is someone, much like myself, that has a loner type personality over a socialite type personality. Now, nothing wrong with either one of these personalities, but wildlife photography is a pretty solitary exercise. Rarely do wildlife photographers collaborate, not that they don't, but I can tell you about 99% of the time, it's just me, my R5, and the Holy Grail wildlife lens out there pursuing wildlife to get a mug shot of. You got to remember, it's wildlife, they're hard to get close to, they're skittish, and having another person in tow is just going to make that much harder to be able to get the mug shot that you're after. The last thing we want to do is be spooking the wildlife, making them flee. We want them as calm when we leave as they were when we found them to get their mug shot. Who knows, you may want to come back another day at another time and get the same picture or a different picture of the same wildlife there. And just having extra people around is going to make that a whole lot harder on you. So the person that has the loner personality probably does a whole lot better getting into wildlife photography over someone that is a socialite, in my opinion. The second quality or attribute that I think lends itself to the person that wants to do wildlife photography or to be labeled a wildlife photographer is that person that doesn't need to sleep in every day, because the wildlife that you're wanting to pursue to get a mugshot of, the majority of them are going to be active or most active between pre-dawn and sunrise. That time period that you'll hear people refer to as blue hour and golden hour. Now, it's not that there's not some wildlife active mid-morning and on that you could sleep in and still get out mid-morning and get a shot of, but those are typically going to be what songbirds, that type of stuff. But even then, it's going to be hard to get a shot of them because they like to hang out in the thick bushes and tree limbs and stuff like that. And then you're dealing with bright sunshine and harsh shadows as well. The other thing is you're going to find out that there's a lot of species that are migratory, only come through your area a few days to a few weeks out of the year. And if they're not close to you, you may have to drive several hours away to find a location where that species is that you're wanting to get a mug shot of. That means you're getting up several hours before the sun even thinks about getting up, so you can get to this location and be set up ready to get that mug shot of the wildlife that you're after. So don't sleep in. If you like to sleep in, you might want to consider a different hobby than wildlife photography. The third attribute or quality that a person needs to be a wildlife photographer or to get into wildlife photography is someone that I think has what I would call the outdoor lifestyle background over someone that comes from suburbia or the concrete jungle of an inner city for this reason. To learn wildlife photography, you got to learn your camera and what settings are required for different situations when it comes to wildlife photography. And that in itself can be a pretty daunting task. But if you don't have the outdoor lifestyle background, and I'm going to just say hunting, fishing, trapping, that type of deal. I was fortunate to be born into a family that if they weren't working, that's all they'd done. But if you don't have that background, now you need to learn not only the habits of the wildlife you want to get a mugshot of, but also the habitat in which that animal survives and thrives in. And not all wildlife survive in the same type ecosystem. And then you're going to have animals like predators and prey type animals. And it's going to be those animals that either make their living or their survival with their sense of smell. So that means you got to be upwind of them, keep the wind in your face, because let's pick out the white-tailed deer. If he's to smell you, he's going to run around giving his alarm whistle so that everything else in that territory knows that danger is lurking. And he's not going to care. The only thing you have in your hands is a camera to take his mug shot with. So if you have the outdoor lifestyle background in your background, wildlife photography is just going to come second nature to you, going to be an extension of your season. So don't overlook wildlife photography if you have the outdoor lifestyle background. But again, don't let your background, if it's suburbia or the inner city, keep you from exploring the joys of the outdoors and wildlife photography. So why don't more people get into wildlife photography? Well, I think there's as many getting in as there's probably getting out. But most of it is centered around, I think, the very first thing is people didn't set realistic expectations of what their goals were before they got into the hobby. And then to find out that it can be pretty expensive to play the wildlife photographer game as well. You know, you're dealing with a wild animal that's hard to get close to, and to make up for not being able to get close to, they end up purchasing lens or looking at purchasing a lens that's called a mega zoom, like a Canon 200 to 800, or the big prime lenses like my Holy Grail wildlife lens, a 600 millimeter f4. And these things come with a pretty steep price tag. Brand new, you're talking about anywhere from $2,000 to over $13,000. And that does not even include the camera body that you may marry to that. Now, you also got to remember, we all have different wants, needs, and desires. If you don't need pro-level equipment, if you're not out to be a professional at it and try and sell prints, you probably don't need a Canon R5 and a 600 mil prime lens. But the other thing to take into account is this, this hobby has a pretty high, what I would call, failure rate. And if we all, us wildlife photographers, if we were on a baseball team, the majority of us would be batting below the Mendoza line, right? The problem with that, people on social media see all these stunning wildlife photos. They only see the one that you posted. They didn't see the thousands that you called, you know. There will be no substitute for you learning the craft of wildlife photography or photography in general, and nothing's going to substitute for you getting as close as you possibly can to that animal, regardless of the equipment that you have. But getting close with subpar equipment will be more paramount than it will be with someone that has the higher end equipment. But first thing, define your goals, what it is you're really wanting to get out of wildlife photography. If it's just to get out there in nature and be surrounded by wildlife, trust me, you can do that on the cheap. Just have your expectations set accordingly. So that's what I have for y'all today. If you would, like, share, and subscribe. Give it the old thumbs up button. That way the algorithm will show it to more like-minded people. But get out there, run the shutter, have fun, be safe. It doesn't matter what type of camera gear you choose chase wildlife with. It should be fun, but you should be safe, because I'm positive somebody at home would like to see you again. I'll catch you all on the next video.